I returned from a 3-day marketing conference in Chicago to find my office floor eerily quiet. Walking toward my team's workspace, I discovered empty desks where my 5-person creative team once sat. No personal items, no computers, no explanation. Just vacant cubicles and disconnected phone lines. My boss, Derek's office door was closed with muffled voices inside. I stood frozen briefcase in hand as the cleaning crew wheeled away the last desk. My team of 2 years had vanished without a trace. My silence began right there, calculated and deliberate. I retreated to my office, maintaining my composure, while Derek conducted impromptu meetings with department heads down the hallway. Through my partially open door, I could hear his animated voice explaining what he called his strategic restructuring initiative to anyone who would listen. The words drifted through the air like poison as he described eliminating what he termed redundant creative positions to make room for one exceptional talent. That exceptional talent turned out to be Marcus Whitfield Derek's brother-in-law, who had just emerged from a spectacularly failed startup venture in Silicon Valley. Derek's voice practically vibrated with misplaced confidence as he painted Marcus as a digital transformation specialist, destined to revolutionize our traditional advertising firm's approach to modern marketing. The truth hit me like a physical blow when I overheard Brenda from Human Resources explaining the timeline to another manager. My team had received their termination emails Friday afternoon at 4:30, precisely 2 hours after I had delivered my keynote presentation on integrated marketing strategies to 300 conference attendees. The timing was no coincidence. Derek had waited until I was physically unable to intervene, standing on a stage 200 miles away before he destroyed the careers of 5 people who had trusted him. Each terminated employee received exactly the legal minimum severance package, nothing more. No transition period, no respect for their years of award-winning campaigns that had built Derek's reputation within the company. No consideration for the fact that Sarah had been with us since the beginning, that James had turned down competing offers just last month, or that Emma had recently relocated from Portland specifically for the growth opportunities Derek had promised. I watched through my window as Derek personally escorted Marcus around the office space like a proud real estate agent, showing off premium property. He gestured enthusiastically toward the cleared area where my team's desks had stood, just hours before, explaining sightlines and collaborative potential to his golden hire. Marcus nodded along, occasionally pulling out his phone to take pictures of the empty space. The most devastating detail came when I noticed that all evidence of my team's achievements had been systematically erased. The framed client testimonials that had decorated Sarah's cubicle were gone. James's collection of industry awards had vanished. Emma's wall of successful campaign metrics had been stripped clean. Even the group photo from our regional advertising excellence ceremony had been removed from the common area and presumably dumped into one of those storage boxes the cleaning crew had wheeled away. Derek had not just fired my team. He had attempted to erase their entire professional existence from our office, as if their contributions had never mattered, as if their innovations and client relationships could be simply replaced by one person with family connections and empty promises about digital transformation. As I sat in my office watching Derek continue his excited tour with Marcus, something cold and methodical settled into my mind. This was not just corporate restructuring, this was betrayal of the most calculated kind, and Derek had made one crucial miscalculation. He assumed that my silence meant acceptance, that my lack of immediate protest indicated compliance with his decision. He had no idea that my silence was actually the beginning of his downfall. That evening, I drove to the small coffee shop downtown where my team often gathered after particularly challenging projects. I needed to understand the full scope of what Derek had done, and I needed to hear it directly from the people whose lives he had just demolished. Sarah answered my call on the second ring, and I could hear exhaustion in her voice before she even spoke. As our lead designer and a single mother of twin 8-year-old girls, she had built her entire life around the stability our firm provided. When she agreed to meet me, her voice cracked as she explained that her daughter Lucy was scheduled for heart surgery in 3 weeks. The procedure had been planned for months, coordinated carefully with Sarah's health insurance and vacation time. Catalina, my coverage ends in exactly 9 days, she whispered across the small cafe table, her hands wrapped around a cup of coffee that had long since grown cold. Lucy's surgery costs $47,000 without insurance. I've been on the phone all day with the hospital trying to understand what options exist. They're being kind, but there's only so much they can do. She had been with our agency since its early days, designing the campaigns that established our reputation for creative excellence. Derek had personally assured her just 6 weeks ago that her position was not only secure, but that she would be promoted to creative director by year end. Based on that promise, she had turned down an offer from a competing firm that would have provided even better benefits. James lived only 4 blocks away, so he walked to meet us 20 minutes later. As our senior copywriter, he had crafted the words that won us our 3 most prestigious industry awards. His situation was equally devastating, but in a completely different way. 3 weeks ago, he and his wife had closed on their first house, a modest 2-bedroom craftsman in a neighborhood with excellent schools. The mortgage payment is $2,100 monthly, he explained, running his hands through his hair in a gesture I had never seen from him during even our most stressful client presentations. Unemployment benefits will cover maybe half of that, and only if I qualify immediately. Derek told me in my annual review that I was being considered for the senior creative position. He encouraged me to make the house purchase, said it showed stability and long-term commitment to the company. James revealed something that made my stomach turn. Derek had actually attended the closing ceremony for his house purchase, shaking hands with the real estate agent and joking about how James was locked in to staying with the company for years to come, all while knowing that termination paperwork was already being prepared. Emma joined us 30 minutes later, having driven across town from her apartment near the University District. As our junior analyst, she had moved to our city from Portland 6 months ago, specifically for what Derek described as unlimited growth potential within our expanding analytics department. She had given up a comfortable position with a nonprofit organization because Derek had painted such an exciting picture of career advancement opportunities. I turned down 3 different job offers last month, she said, quietly, staring out the window at the evening traffic. One was with a tech startup that would have paid $15,000 more annually, but Derek kept talking about how I was going to lead the new data science initiative, how he was planning to double the analytics budget next year. He made it sound like staying here was the smartest career move I could possibly make. The cruel irony was that Derek had actively discouraged her from networking with other agencies. He had convinced her that exploring external opportunities would demonstrate disloyalty and potentially harm her advancement prospects within our firm. She had trusted him completely, canceling informational interviews and declining to attend industry meetups where she might have developed backup options. David arrived last, apologizing for the delay because he had been dealing with what he described as a family emergency. As our account coordinator, he managed client relationships with meticulous attention to detail that kept our projects running smoothly behind the scenes. What I did not know was that David had been supporting both his elderly parents and helping cover medical expenses for his wife's ongoing treatment for multiple sclerosis. My wife's medication costs $800 monthly, even with insurance, he explained, his voice steady, but his eyes reflecting deep worry. My parents need assistance with their mortgage, since my father's disability benefits were reduced. I've been managing all of that because Derek gave me a raise 4 months ago and promised another increase if I took on additional account responsibilities. That raise and those additional responsibilities now made horrible sense. Derek had been positioning David to handle a larger workload specifically because he knew the position would be eliminated. He had essentially extracted maximum value from David's dedication before discarding him. The most painful revelation came when Madison finally joined our group nearly an hour after I had initially reached out to everyone. As our social media specialist, she had been building innovative digital strategies that were starting to attract attention from larger agencies across the region. She was also engaged to be married next month, and she had been helping to support her younger brother's college expenses. My wedding is in 5 weeks, she said simply, as if those words contained entire universes of stress and uncertainty. We've already paid deposits for everything: the venue, the catering, the photographer. My brother is in his junior year studying engineering, and I've been covering his dormitory costs because my parents can't afford them. Madison's situation revealed another layer of Derek's calculated cruelty. He had specifically praised her work during last month's team meeting, telling the entire staff that her social media campaigns were bringing in new clients and that she was becoming indispensable to the company's future growth. He had even suggested that she consider marketing herself as an expert speaker at industry conferences. As we sat together in that coffee shop, sharing stories and trying to process what had happened, a clearer picture emerged of Derek's systematic deception. This had not been a sudden decision or a response to unexpected financial pressures. This had been planned for weeks, possibly months, with Derek carefully manipulating each team member to maximize their vulnerability while minimizing their ability to land safely elsewhere. He had timed the terminations to occur during my absence specifically because he knew I would have fought for my team. He had scheduled it for Friday afternoon to minimize their ability to immediately seek legal counsel or organize any kind of collective response. He had even gone so far as to plant seeds of doubt about their prospects elsewhere, subtly discouraging them from maintaining strong networks within the industry. But Derek had made one critical error in his planning. He assumed that destroying my team would leave me isolated and powerless. He believed that presenting me with a fait accompli would force me to accept his decision and work with Marcus to rebuild from nothing. He had no idea that every conversation I was having with my former teammates was teaching me exactly how to destroy him. Within 2 weeks of Marcus's arrival, the agency was experiencing disasters on a scale that none of us had ever witnessed. Derek's golden hire was not just incompetent, he was catastrophically, spectacularly incompetent in ways that seemed to defy basic professional common sense. The first major incident occurred on Marcus's third day when he decided to modernize our client database system without consulting anyone or creating backup files. He had somehow gained administrative access to our central server and began what he called optimizing the data architecture for enhanced digital synergy. By lunchtime on Wednesday, 5 years' worth of client contact information, project histories, billing records, and relationship notes had been completely erased. Our IT department spent 72 straight hours attempting to recover the lost data, ultimately retrieving only fragments of what had been a comprehensive client management system. Thousands of phone numbers, email addresses, project specifications, and billing preferences simply vanished into digital oblivion. Derek found himself calling clients to ask for their basic contact information, trying to explain why our system upgrade had deleted their records. The humiliation was immediate and profound. Clients who had worked with us for years suddenly received calls asking them to provide information they had assumed we already possessed. The message was clear. This agency could not be trusted with basic data management, let alone complex marketing strategies. Marcus's response to the data catastrophe was to suggest implementing what he called a blockchain-based client relationship protocol that would revolutionize how advertising agencies interface with customer touchpoints. His 45-minute presentation to the emergency staff meeting included 17 different buzzwords and exactly 0 actionable solutions for recovering our lost client information. The real disaster came the following week when Marcus prepared for his first major client presentation. Wellington Industries had been our largest account for 3 years, generating nearly $2 million in annual revenue. Their quarterly strategy meeting was scheduled for Tuesday morning, and Derek had positioned it as Marcus's opportunity to demonstrate his digital transformation expertise. I attended that presentation because my role as project manager required my presence, and I watched in horrified fascination as Marcus systematically destroyed our most important client relationship. He began confidently launching into what he described as a disruptive paradigm shift for Wellington's brand positioning. The problem became apparent within the first 10 minutes. Marcus had confused Wellington Industries with Wellington's primary competitor, Hartwell Manufacturing. Every slide in his presentation featured Hartwell's branding colors, referenced Hartwell's market position, and proposed strategies that directly contradicted Wellington's corporate values. Marcus enthusiastically recommended that Wellington adopt the exact messaging approach that Hartwell had been using to steal market share from them for the past 2 years. The silence in that conference room was deafening. Wellington's CEO sat with his arms crossed, watching Marcus explain how Wellington should embrace the innovative approaches that industry leaders like Hartwell Manufacturing have pioneered. The marketing director's face grew redder with each passing minute. The CFO began gathering his papers halfway through the presentation. When Marcus finished his pitch and asked for questions, Wellington's CEO stood up slowly and said, "I think there's been some confusion about which company you're supposed to be helping." He walked out of the room without another word, followed by his entire team. Derek's attempts to salvage the situation were painful to witness. He chased Wellington's executives into the parking lot, trying to explain that there had been a minor miscommunication and that we could schedule a follow-up meeting to address their actual needs. The CEO turned around and said, "Derek, we've worked together for 3 years. I trusted you with our most sensitive marketing strategies, and you just sent someone into our boardroom who doesn't even know our company name." The contract termination notice arrived by email before we made it back to the office. But Marcus was just getting started. That same week, he launched an unauthorized social media campaign for Riverside Bank, one of our mid-tier accounts that generated steady income through conservative, trust-focused messaging. Marcus had apparently decided that Riverside needed to connect with younger demographics through edgy, disruptive content. The campaign he created without approval featured a series of posts suggesting that traditional banking was for boomers who don't understand financial innovation. He used outdated meme formats and slang that had been out of fashion for several years, creating content that managed to be both offensive to the bank's existing customers and embarrassing to the younger audience he was attempting to reach. The most disastrous post included a graphic that accidentally used imagery from a competitor bank's logo, along with text that made fun of old-school financial institutions that prioritize boring things like security and stability. Within 6 hours, the post had generated 300 negative comments and had been shared across local social media groups as an example of tone-deaf marketing. Riverside Bank's president called Derek, personally demanding an immediate explanation for why their official social media presence was suddenly mocking the conservative values that defined their brand identity. The cleanup process required a public apology, the deletion of all Marcus's content, and a comprehensive audit of our social media management procedures. 3 smaller clients terminated their contracts that same week after receiving Marcus's strategic recommendations. His proposals were filled with contradictory objectives, meaningless corporate buzzwords strung together without logical connection, and timelines that defied basic project management principles. One client described his strategy document as 20 pages of words that sound important but don't actually mean anything. Derek found himself working 18-hour days, desperately trying to contain the damage, while covering for Marcus's continued failures. I watched him age visibly during those 2 weeks, his confident demeanor replaced by barely controlled panic as he realized the magnitude of his mistake. Phone calls from angry clients became a daily routine. Emergency meetings to address communication breakdowns filled his calendar. During this entire catastrophe, I maintained my professional silence. I attended meetings when required, completed my individual projects efficiently, and responded to direct questions with minimal factual answers. I did not volunteer solutions for the crises Marcus created. I did not offer suggestions for client retention strategies. I simply documented everything with meticulous detail, building a comprehensive record of each failure, each client complaint, and each instance of Derek's frantic attempts to salvage his reputation. Derek interpreted my quiet demeanor as professional acceptance of the new structure. He had no idea that my silence was strategic, that every disaster I witnessed was being carefully cataloged for future use. He believed he was weathering a temporary adjustment period before Marcus found his footing. He had no idea that Marcus's failures were about to get much, much worse. By the end of Marcus's third week, our agency was facing a financial crisis that threatened its very survival. The cascade of client departures had created what our accounting department grimly described as a catastrophic revenue shortfall. But the real devastation lay in the contractual obligations Derek could no longer meet. Wellington Industries' contract termination triggered a clause that required us to return their advance payment for the full year's services. That advance totaled $420,000 money that had already been allocated towards salaries, office rent, and operational expenses. The contract also included penalty provisions for breach of service quality, potentially adding another $200,000 in damages. Riverside Bank's legal department initiated proceedings for what they termed reputational harm caused by unauthorized and damaging social media content. Their preliminary demand letter requested $350,000 in compensation for the emergency public relations campaign they had been forced to launch to counteract Marcus's posts. They also terminated their annual contract, eliminating another $160,000 in expected revenue. The domino effect accelerated beyond anything Derek had anticipated. Harrison Tools, Midwest Manufacturing, and Precision Engineering all invoked early termination clauses within the same week, citing declining service quality and communication failures as grounds for ending their relationships. Each departure eliminated steady monthly revenue while triggering various penalty and refund obligations. Derek's situation became personally catastrophic when I discovered through overheard phone conversations that he had provided personal guarantees on several major contracts to secure his promotion to regional director 18 months ago. The parent company had required these guarantees as proof of his confidence in client retention and revenue growth. Derek had essentially bet his own financial future on his ability to maintain and expand our client base. Those personal guarantees meant that Derek was individually liable for the Wellington Industries refund and penalties. His personal assets, including his house and investment accounts, could be seized to cover the agency's obligations if the company declared bankruptcy. The promotion he had fought so hard to achieve had become a financial death trap. The agency's parent company called an emergency board meeting for Friday afternoon, summoning Derek to Chicago to explain what they described as unprecedented client flight and revenue collapse. The email was copied to the entire senior management team, making Derek's professional humiliation visible to everyone who had witnessed his confident promises about Marcus's transformative potential. I learned through Brenda in Human Resources that Derek had leveraged his promotion and salary increase to purchase a $500,000 house in the most expensive neighborhood in town. His monthly mortgage payment was nearly $4,000 based on income projections that assumed continued client growth and potential bonuses tied to agency performance. He had also leased a luxury vehicle and taken out a significant loan to renovate his new home. Derek's personal financial exposure was devastating. The house purchase had required him to liquidate most of his retirement savings for the down payment. The luxury car lease obligated him to monthly payments he could no longer afford if he lost his position. The renovation loan carried a variable interest rate that would increase substantially if his credit rating declined. During those final days before the board meeting, I watched Derek transform from the arrogant executive who had casually destroyed my team into a desperate man facing complete professional and personal ruin. He worked through the night, calling clients, pleading with them to reconsider their departures, offering discounts and service guarantees that only highlighted how badly things had deteriorated. His conversations with Marcus became increasingly heated as Derek finally confronted the reality of his hiring decision. I overheard one particularly brutal exchange where Derek accused Marcus of misrepresenting his qualifications and demanded explanations for the systematic failures that were destroying the agency. Marcus responded with defensive anger, claiming that the existing client base was not ready for innovative digital strategies and that the failures reflected the agency's resistance to change rather than his own incompetence. The final confrontation occurred Thursday afternoon when Derek discovered that Marcus had been secretly interviewing for positions with competing agencies, using his brief tenure with us as credentials for his next opportunity. Marcus had apparently been telling potential employers that he was leaving because our agency lacked the strategic vision to implement transformative digital solutions. Derek's professional reputation within the industry was in ruins. Word had spread through the advertising community about the spectacular client losses and the circumstances surrounding my team's termination, followed by Marcus's hiring. Other agencies were quietly celebrating the acquisition of our former clients while avoiding any association with Derek's leadership methods. The board meeting loomed like an execution date. Derek knew he would face questions about decision-making processes, client relationship management, and his personal guarantees on contracts that were now in default. He had no good answers for any of these inquiries. But Derek's crisis had created the perfect opportunity for my strategic counterattack, and I had been preparing for this moment with meticulous care. While Derek scrambled to manage disasters and prepare for professional humiliation, I had been quietly building relationships and documenting evidence that would change everything. The silence Derek had interpreted as acceptance was about to become the foundation of his complete downfall. On Thursday evening, less than 24 hours before Derek's scheduled appearance before the board, I placed a call to Wellington Industries' CEO. Richard Morrison and I had developed a strong professional relationship over the 3 years his company had been our primary client. He had specifically requested my involvement in their strategic planning sessions and had praised my analytical approach to campaign development. "Richard, this is Catalina Martinez from the agency." I began using a tone that was professional but carried an undertone of urgency. "I want to discuss what happened during Tuesday's presentation and explore whether there might be a path forward that serves Wellington's interests." His response was immediate and encouraging. "Catalina, I was hoping I'd hear from you. That presentation was the most embarrassing professional experience I've had in 15 years. What happened to your team? You had people there who understood our business, who delivered results. Now we're dealing with someone who doesn't even know our company name." I had prepared for this conversation carefully, and my approach was straightforward. "Richard, I want to be completely transparent about the situation here. My entire team was terminated while I was at the Chicago conference, replaced by one person with family connections but no relevant experience. The people who built your campaigns, who understood your market position and customer base, were eliminated without consultation or transition planning. The conversation that followed was more productive than I had dared to hope. Richard confirmed what I had suspected Wellington's relationship was, with the expertise and reliability my team had provided, not with the agency's corporate structure. He was willing to consider restoring the contract under specific conditions, primarily the return of the team members who had delivered consistent results and the removal of leadership that had demonstrated such poor judgment. "If you can get your team back and ensure this kind of disaster doesn't happen again, we'll honor the original contract," he said. "But we need guarantees about decision-making authority and quality control. We can't work with an agency that treats its best people as disposable." I made similar calls to Riverside Bank and three other clients over the next 2 days, carefully explaining the circumstances that had led to the service failures they had experienced. In each conversation, I positioned myself not as someone undermining the agency, but as someone who had been excluded from decisions that had damaged relationships I had helped build. The responses were remarkably consistent. These clients wanted to work with competent professionals who understood their needs and delivered reliable service. They had no loyalty to Derek or interest in giving Marcus additional opportunities to create problems. If the right team could be restored under appropriate leadership, they were open to reconsidering their departures. Armed with these preliminary agreements, I requested a private meeting with the board members who were traveling to town for Derek's emergency session. I sent a formal email to the parent company's regional director explaining that I had relevant information about client relationships and potential recovery strategies that might inform their evaluation of the situation. The meeting was scheduled for Friday morning, 2 hours before Derek's scheduled appearance. I arrived at the conference room with a comprehensive presentation that I had prepared over the previous week during the long evenings when Derek was desperately trying to manage his cascading crises. The board consisted of 4 senior executives from the parent company, including Regional Director Patricia Hawkins, who had ultimate authority over our agency's continued operation. I had met Patricia briefly during previous corporate meetings, but this was my first opportunity to present directly to the leadership team. Good morning, everyone. I'm here to discuss the recent client departures and present information that might be relevant to your assessment of our agency's viability and leadership structure. I began projecting confidence while maintaining the respectful tone appropriate for addressing senior executives. My presentation was organized into 4 main sections: documentation of the decision-making process that led to current crisis analysis of client departure patterns and stated reasons, preliminary agreements for contract restoration, and recommendations for organizational recovery. The first section included recorded conversations where Derek had made promises to my team members while secretly planning their termination. I had been documenting these interactions for months as part of standard project management, but they now provided clear evidence of deliberate deception. The recordings revealed Derek's explicit encouragement of major financial commitments by team members he knew he intended to fire. These conversations demonstrate a pattern of leadership that prioritizes personal advancement over employee welfare and operational stability. I explained playing excerpts that showed Derek encouraging James to purchase his house and Sarah to decline external opportunities. The second section detailed each client's specific complaints about service quality under the new structure, along with direct quotes from exit interviews I had conducted. The pattern was unmistakable. Clients were not leaving because of market conditions or competitive pressure, but because of fundamental service failures directly attributable to Marcus's incompetence and Derek's poor oversight. The third section was the game changer. I presented preliminary restoration agreements from Wellington Industries Riverside Bank and 3 smaller accounts contingent on specific personnel and leadership changes. The potential recovered revenue totaled nearly $3 million annually, more than enough to restore the agency's financial stability. These clients have indicated willingness to honor their original contracts if we can demonstrate that the service failures were aberrational rather than representative of our new operational approach, I explained. They want to work with proven professionals, not experiment with unqualified personnel. The final section outlined my recommendations: immediate termination of Derek and Marcus, restoration of the terminated team members with enhanced roles and compensation, and implementation of oversight procedures to prevent similar leadership failures in the future. I proposed accepting the regional director position myself, with board oversight during a 6-month probationary period. The expertise exists to recover from this crisis, but it requires leadership changes that acknowledge the fundamental errors in judgment that created the current situation. I concluded, Half measures or attempts to gradually improve the existing structure will not satisfy client demands for accountability and competence. The board's response was immediate and unanimous. Patricia Hawkins asked pointed questions about my client relationships, my team's qualifications, and the timeline for implementing recovery strategies. Within 30 minutes, they had made their decision. Derek's meeting was canceled. He would be terminated immediately along with Marcus. I would be promoted to regional director with full authority to rebuild the department and restore client relationships. The company would provide whatever resources were necessary to implement the recovery plan, including enhanced compensation packages for returning team members. The transformation was swift and decisive. Derek's desperate attempts to salvage his position became irrelevant because the board had already moved beyond him to focus on solutions, rather than excuses. His personal guarantees remained his individual responsibility, but the agency would be stabilized under new leadership. My calculated silence had created the perfect conditions for this reversal. By allowing Derek's incompetence to fully reveal itself while simultaneously building client relationships and documenting evidence, I had positioned myself as the obvious solution to a crisis he had created. Justice was about to be served, and it was going to be thorough. The board's decision was announced to the entire agency staff at 4:30 Friday afternoon, just hours after Derek had expected to be defending his leadership choices to these same executives. Instead, Derek found himself cleaning out his office while I met with human resources to discuss terms for my promotion and the process for contacting my former team members. Derek's termination was immediate and unequivocal. His security access was revoked, his company accounts were frozen, and he was escorted from the building by the same security team that had overseen the removal of my teammates' belongings just 3 weeks earlier. The symbolism was stark and intentional, demonstrating to the entire staff that the board was committed to accountability at every level. Marcus disappeared from the office that same afternoon, apparently having received word about the leadership changes before they were officially announced. He left behind a desk covered with unfinished projects and strategic documents that contained more buzzwords than actionable content. His brief presence in our agency became a cautionary tale about the dangers of prioritizing connections over competence. My first action as regional director was to personally contact each former team member with restoration offers that exceeded their previous positions and compensation. The conversations were emotional and deeply satisfying, representing not just professional vindication, but personal healing for people who had been treated with shocking disrespect. Sarah was the first person I called, reaching her Friday evening as she was preparing for another sleepless night, worrying about her daughter's upcoming surgery. "Sarah, this is Catalina. I have news that's going to change everything for you and Lucy." I began, allowing excitement to color my professional tone for the first time in weeks. The offer I presented exceeded her expectations in every meaningful way. Creative director position with a 40% salary increase, enhanced health benefits that would cover Lucy's surgery and ongoing care needs, flexible scheduling that accommodated her responsibilities as a single mother, and a signing bonus that would eliminate her immediate financial stress about the medical expenses. You built the creative foundation for this agency's success, and you deserve recognition and compensation that reflect your contributions, I explained. The board specifically requested your return because they understand that our client relationships depend on proven expertise, not empty promises about digital transformation. Sarah's response was immediate acceptance, followed by tears of relief. The surgery could proceed as scheduled, her financial stability was restored, and her professional growth would continue under leadership that valued her skills and understood her personal circumstances. James received a similar offer when I called him Saturday morning. Senior copywriter with supervisory responsibilities, a 35% salary increase that made his mortgage payments manageable, and the opportunity to lead the development of our new content strategy division. The position came with assurances about long-term stability and clear advancement pathways. James, your writing has won us our most prestigious industry recognition, and it's time your compensation reflected that value. I told him during our call. Derek's promises about your career development were empty, but these opportunities are backed by board approval and detailed implementation plans. Emma's restoration as account management director represented the growth opportunities Derek had falsely promised but never intended to deliver. Her new role included responsibility for client relationship development, analytical oversight of campaign performance, and participation in strategic planning sessions with senior leadership. The compensation package included support for professional development and conference attendance that would enhance her industry credibility. Emma, your analytical skills have consistently exceeded client expectations, and now you'll have the authority and resources to implement the innovations you've been proposing, I explained during our conversation. This position includes the decision-making responsibility you've earned and the recognition you deserve. David's appointment as operations coordinator included scheduling flexibility that accommodated his family obligations and compensation that eliminated the financial stress that had been affecting his wife's medical care and his parents' support needs. His new role included oversight of project management systems and client communication protocols that would prevent the kind of service failures Marcus had created. Madison's elevation to Director of Digital Strategy represented validation of her innovative approaches to social media marketing and content development. Her position included budget authority for platform development and team expansion, along with compensation that resolved her wedding financing concerns and provided stable support for her brother's education expenses. Madison, your digital strategies have consistently outperformed industry benchmarks, and now you'll have the resources and authority to expand those successes across our entire client base, I told her during our call. This role includes the creative freedom and professional recognition you've earned through your exceptional work. The office renovation began immediately, transforming the space Derek had cleared for his golden hire into an expanded creative center that reflected our team's enhanced roles and collaborative potential. The new layout included individual offices for senior team members, a dedicated creative development area with updated technology and collaborative spaces designed to facilitate the kind of innovative work that had built our reputation. Client relationship restoration proceeded even more smoothly than I had projected. Wellington Industries' contract renewal included expanded scope and increased budget allocation, reflecting their confidence in our restored team's ability to deliver exceptional results. Richard Morrison personally attended the signing ceremony, expressing relief about working with professionals who understood his company's objectives and market position. Riverside Bank not only withdrew their legal action, but commissioned a comprehensive rebranding campaign that showcased our ability to recover from service failures through competent leadership and authentic communication strategies. Their renewed partnership included provisions for expanded digital marketing services that would utilize Madison's expertise. 3 additional clients who had departed during Marcus's tenure requested meetings to discuss restoration of their contracts. Word had spread through the industry about our leadership changes and team restoration, generating interest from potential new clients who had been monitoring our situation. The agency's financial picture transformed completely within 60 days. Restored contracts eliminated the revenue shortfall that had threatened our survival, while new client acquisitions exceeded our previous growth projections. The crisis that Derek had created through his arrogant decision-making became the foundation for stronger client relationships and enhanced team performance. Derek's personal situation deteriorated as predicted. His house went into foreclosure proceedings when he could not make mortgage payments after losing his salary and facing liability for the contract guarantees. His luxury vehicle was repossessed, and his credit rating collapsed under the weight of financial obligations he could no longer meet. No other agency in our region would consider hiring him after word spread about his decision-making process and the spectacular client losses that resulted. Marcus's attempt to leverage his brief tenure with our agency into positions elsewhere failed completely when potential employers contacted us for references. His professional reputation never recovered from the documented failures and client losses he had created during his short time in our industry. The reversal was complete and satisfying on every level. Derek's arrogance had been replaced by financial desperation and professional isolation. Marcus had been exposed as fundamentally incompetent and professionally unreliable. My team had been restored to positions that exceeded their previous roles and compensation. Our clients had received the accountability and service quality they deserved. Justice had been served with precision and thoroughness that exceeded anything I had imagined when I first discovered those empty desks and chose strategic silence over immediate confrontation. 6 months after that devastating Friday when I returned from Chicago to find empty desks and shattered trust, our agency had not only recovered, but had achieved performance levels that exceeded our previous benchmarks in every meaningful category. The transformation was complete, visible and deeply satisfying for everyone who had witnessed Derek's arrogant destruction of proven expertise. Wellington Industries renewed their annual contract with a 25% increase in scope, specifically citing the restored team's innovative campaign development and reliable project management. Richard Morrison became one of our strongest advocates within the industry, referring two major clients who were seeking agencies with demonstrated ability to deliver consistent results under competent leadership. His testimonial emphasized the importance of working with professionals who understand both creative excellence and client service standards. Riverside Bank's relationship expanded beyond simple contract restoration to include a comprehensive digital transformation project that showcased exactly the kind of innovation Derek had claimed to want. Madison's leadership of this initiative generated industry recognition and attracted attention from other financial institutions seeking authentic digital marketing strategies rather than trendy buzzword solutions. The agency acquired 4 new major accounts within the 6-month period, clients who specifically sought our services based on our reputation for team stability, creative excellence, and leadership that prioritizes competence over personal connections. Our revenue growth exceeded projections by 38%, positioning us among the top-performing agencies in the regional market. Derek's career never recovered from the disaster he had created. The combination of client losses, personal financial guarantees, and industry reputation damage made him essentially unemployable within our field. He eventually accepted a junior-level position with a small firm in another state. His salary reduced to less than half of what he had earned as regional director. His house foreclosure became public record, and his professional network abandoned him after recognizing that association with his name could damage their own reputations. The personal guarantees he had provided to secure his promotion cost him his retirement savings, his luxury vehicle, and his credit rating. The financial obligations exceeded $200,000 money he would be paying back for years while working at a fraction of his previous salary. His arrogance had been replaced by desperate humility, but the industry had moved past him entirely. Marcus's brief career in advertising ended permanently. No agency would hire someone whose documented failures had destroyed client relationships and generated legal liability for his employer. He returned to California and eventually found work in an unrelated field, his digital transformation expertise exposed as empty rhetoric without practical application. His presence in our industry became a cautionary example about the importance of thorough background verification before making personnel decisions. My team members flourished in their enhanced positions, each achieving professional growth that exceeded what any of them had expected when Derek first made his false promises about advancement opportunities. Sarah's creative leadership earned industry recognition, and Lucy's surgery was completely successful, with no financial stress affecting the family's recovery process. Her enhanced compensation and benefits provided the stability that allowed her to focus entirely on creative excellence rather than survival concerns. James's content strategies won 2 regional advertising awards within 4 months, validation of the expertise Derek had casually discarded. His mortgage became manageable rather than stressful, and his wife was able to pursue graduate school because of their improved financial stability. His writing attracted attention from national publications, enhancing both his personal reputation and our agency's industry standing. Emma's analytical innovations transformed our campaign development process, implementing data-driven strategies that improved client results while reducing development time and costs. Her new role included speaking engagements at industry conferences, positioning her as a thought leader in integrated marketing analytics. The growth opportunities Derek had falsely promised became reality under leadership that valued competence over connections. David's operational improvements eliminated the communication failures and project management weaknesses that had created vulnerability to the kind of disasters Marcus generated. His family obligations became manageable rather than overwhelming, and his wife's medical care proceeded without financial constraints. His organizational skills became a competitive advantage that clients specifically requested. Madison's digital strategy leadership attracted national attention, including an invitation to speak at the premier industry conference where I had been presenting when Derek destroyed our team. Her innovative approaches to social media marketing became case studies taught at marketing programs in regional universities. Her wedding proceeded without financial stress, and her brother completed his engineering degree with stable family support. The experience taught all of us invaluable lessons about patience, strategic thinking, and the power of documented competence over political maneuvering. Derek's betrayal had initially seemed like a devastating professional disaster, but it ultimately became the catalyst for career advancement that none of us could have achieved under his leadership. I learned that strategic silence combined with meticulous preparation can create more powerful outcomes than immediate emotional reactions. Sometimes the most effective response to injustice is to allow incompetence to expose itself while building unassailable evidence for systematic change rather than incremental correction. My team learned that loyalty and competence ultimately triumph over politics and favoritism, although the timeline for justice may be longer than immediate emotion demands. Their collective resilience transformed individual vulnerability into shared strength, creating professional relationships that were deeper and more sustainable than what existed before Derek's betrayal. The industry learned that agencies succeed through proven expertise and reliable leadership rather than trendy buzzwords and family connections. Our recovery became a case study in crisis management and strategic planning taught at business schools throughout the region. Derek's downfall sent a clear message throughout our professional community about the consequences of prioritizing personal advancement over team welfare and operational excellence. His story became a cautionary tale about the dangers of arrogance and the importance of understanding that leadership requires competence rather than just authority. Most importantly, we all learned that temporary setbacks can become foundations for lasting success when they are approached with strategic thinking rather than emotional reaction. The silence that Derek interpreted as weakness was actually the beginning of his complete professional destruction and our collective vindication. Justice delayed became justice amplified, and the satisfaction was deeper and more lasting than any immediate confrontation could have provided. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever faced a situation where someone in authority made decisions that seemed to prioritize personal interests over fairness and competence? How did you respond, and what would you do differently if you could handle it again? Share your thoughts in the comments below, because these experiences teach us all valuable lessons about patience strategy and the importance of building strong professional relationships that can survive temporary setbacks. If this story resonated with you and reminded you of your own workplace experiences, please hit the like button to let me know. Subscribe to hear more stories about overcoming professional challenges and finding strength in difficult situations. And if you know someone who might benefit from hearing about strategic patience and the power of documented competence, please share the story with them. Thank you for listening to my journey from that devastating day of empty desks to the satisfaction of complete professional vindication. Remember that sometimes the most powerful response to injustice is strategic silence while building unassailable evidence for systematic change. Your patience and preparation today might become your greatest victory tomorrow.